founding a new colony. We've had a lot of trouble at home lately in our little city-state, and we've decided, the Elder Council has decided that we need to send out a colony. So the order of business today is to figure out where we want to send the colony and what type of government we want to send out. Our stated position is that we need to pick between tyranny and oligarchy because democracy is for losers. Actually, it's the idea is to get you guys to think more about the other two options. And I'm assuming most people would pick democracy if given the choice. So first we're going to hear from the side that wants to go to Spain and establish a... I keep getting you guys mixed up. Spain and oligarchy versus Italy and tyranny. Okay? And I will try to keep these people straight. Alright, so let's start with you. Now, so everybody say your name and then read your...
Alex, I'm saying why we should settle with Spain. People agree. To expand our wealth and power, we need to expand our empire. With the gods on our side, our people could conquer any land we see fit. Fate has given us the land of Iberia right from the beginning. The land of Iberia is one full of all types of resources. Iberia has such a plethora of gold and silver that one could say Iberia is the land of Thea. Iberia also has roots that would rival any dyes of the Phoenicians. These lands are fertile and have constantly produced bountiful harvests. If we settle and colonize these lands, we would experience such an era of wealth and prosperity, our city-state would become second to only Olympus. As mentioned in Strabo's geography, Iberia has neither gold nor silver nor yet copper nor iron that has been found anywhere in the world in such a natural state, either in such quantity or of such good quality. Such a statement is a testament to the amount of minerals contained in the region. There is also a mountain, not very far from Castello, is also a mountain in which the Vedas is said to rise. It is called Silver Mountain on account of the silver mines that are in it. Imagine the wealth to be had once we conquer the mountain. Enough silver that once melted, a new river would be formed that would flow from Athens to Sparta. Not only is Iberia filled with mineral wealth, this land contains large quantities of grain and wine, and also olive oil, not only in large quantities, but also of best quality. And further, wax, honey, and fish are exported from there in such large quantities of kermes and ruddle, which is not inferior to the Scythian earth. And they build up their shapes there out of native timber and have salt quarries in their country. Not only is there such a collection of resources to be had, the land also has the timber to build more ships to transfer the resources back to Greece. Once we have decided to settle this region, our nation will prosper and thrive like no other nation before. This is the first step to a world in which the Greeks will be the most powerful and legendary people to ever walk the earth. The land of Iberia is also rich in arable land and fish in the sea. Iberia has been described by Strabo as the country of which I am speaking is fertile, and is also traversed by rivers coasts large and small, all of them flowing to the eastern parts and parallel to the Tagus. Most of them offer voyages inland and contain very great quantities of gold dust as well. Such fertile lands are bound to produce good harvests. This land has surely been blessed by Demeter. Also, with such rivers, irrigation will be a simple task. Also, the coast of Iberia and Celtica, and this coast too, all of it, is fertile and has good harbors. Again, more references to the fertility of the land. Also, good harbors mean shipping back to Greece is a viable task. Not only is this land suitable for growing wheat and other edible plants, Iberia also produces quantities of these roots that are useful for dyeing. As for olive trees, grapevines, fig trees, and similar plants, the Iberian coast and our sea is richly supplied with them all. Not only can we grow many types of plants in this region, the region is close to the shore, which means shipping back to Greece will be fast and easy. Fellow Greeks, we must not hesitate in our decision on whether or not the land of Iberia should be colonized. Instead, we must prepare our ships and set sail for this wonderful land that has been blessed by the gods. I promise you that any who are brave enough to go to Iberia will be forever remembered as one of the founding members of a new age of prosperity for us Greeks. Thank you very much, and may the gods aid us in our goals.
Well done. Okay. So now we've heard about the positive aspects of Italy. Let's move on to Iberia, right?
They were even called Slytherin or what?
Slytherin, raise your hand. Ravenclaw, raise your hand. Awesome. Okay. move on to our second. This is going to be focused on why Italy is not a good place to settle.
What is wrong with building a settlement in Italy? It has an abundance of resources, the potential to become very prosperous, and other Greek settlements with which alliances could be forged. All of this is true, but there are also many risks that must not be avoided. Campania, the region that is being suggested to settle in, contains some factors that can only hinder our settlement. Things like competition with nearby cities, reliance on the Strait of Messina, and the danger of settling near potentially hostile populaces all raise serious concerns with the aforementioned area. Pithecues, Cumae, and Neapolis, all of these cities are within the vicinity of this area, and they are all trading metals, fish, and other goods to make it home. This is great for them, but if our plan is to profit off the same process, then we are going to have a problem. Competing with established cities that already control huge pieces of trade and certain resources is incredibly difficult and can even prove to be impossible. Strabo's geography states that Cumae has the best fisheries for the catching of large fish, and that the city is prosperous. This means that they already control a lot of the trade that we would be going after, and they would be very hard to compete against. This would cause minimal profit for our settlement if any profit ends up existing at all. On top of this, if we were to establish our city in this location, we would have to use the Strait of Messina, which means that Syracuse would have full control over any trade coming from this city. The Strait of Messina is located between Italy and Sicily. It is the only way to get ships around southern Italy without going all the way around Sicily, which would be into Carthaginian-controlled waters. This means that we would be heavily reliant on Syracuse to maintain peace with us, and on the Carthaginians maintaining peace with Syracuse. If a war were to break out between these two, trade in the area of Syracuse would inevitably cease, and our city would be left without a way to make profit at all. Building in Campania would make us highly reliant upon the actions of other nations, which is almost completely out of our control. These are all potential long-term problems that our city could face, but there also lies an imminent threat within the populaces surrounding those areas. A big problem with this area is the idea of being reliant on these said nations cooperating with us. Indigenous tribes do pose a minor threat, but the bigger issue is with the established cities that were mentioned earlier. The idea of settling here makes the assumption that other cities are not going to care about our intention to steal part of their current organization. This, mixed with the fact that the people of Cumae have a history of being fairly hostile, proved to be very scary threats. According to Strabo's geography again, the Citizeni were ejected by the Cumae people from the whole of Campania. This leads me to believe that the people of Cumae are not against taking hostile actions when it suits their desires. Strabo also says that Neapolis has springs of hot water and bathing establishments that are not inferior to those at Bayou. This speaks for the wealth of the area, but it also says that these cities maintain a lot of it. A lot of wealth typically means a large army to protect said wealth, and I doubt that the people of Neapolis or Cumae would have any issue protecting their interests against a new city trying to take something. All these problems combined lead me to believe that Italy is incredibly risky and would prove to be inhospitable to a new settlement. A combination of competition, reliance on a small body of water, and potentially hostile nations proved to be highly risky integration of a settlement. Italy does have a lot of resources that could be very profitable for any nation that decides to settle here, but it also has a lot of problems. Settling here makes the assumption that none of these problems come to fruition, which seems highly unlikely. The question is, how big of a gamble are we willing to make?
Okay, now that we've talked about why Italy would be a risky proposition for a new colony, let's move on to the next issue.
Everyone here is probably for democracy. But do you know it's flawed? When you think of democracy, you think of freedom and liberty, of the people, for the people. But how do the people really know what is best for them? Who is really suited to decide what is best for a country? The farmer, who doesn't know what a law or policy is? Or the educated aristocrat, who have read and studied everything that goes into a well-structured economy and city-state? Democracy has many flaws in comparison to oligarchy. Three of the major flaws of democracy in the times of the ancient Greeks where the majority voter is poor and or uneducated. Policies and decisions take much more time to be made, and are filled with heartache to make these decisions. And corruption and selfishness is a commonality. The democratic system of antiquity was a meeting in which a representative was chosen to speak on behalf of one of the three parties, and the commoners would be able to speak and or give ideas and opinions to the representative. This opened the door for many unnecessary and unmanageable requests. As stated in Old Oligarchy, the Constitution of Athenians, everywhere on earth the best element is opposed to democracy. For among the best people there is minimal wantonness and injustice, but a maximum of scrupulous care for what is good. Whereas among the people there is a maximum of ignorance, disorder, and wickedness. For poverty draws them rather to disgraceful actions, and because of lack of money, some men are uneducated and ignorant. This illustrates the types of ideas that you would expect to be brought up in a democratic policy hearing or lawmaking debate. Along with this, there was little professional structure to these hearings, and even Plato stated in the Plutarch, the life of Dion, the civilian involvement in decision-making was a bazaar of polities, and usually transacted little public business in their assembly of the people. These disorganized and overpopulated assemblies took much more time to get anything accomplished, and also caused more opportunities for inaccuracy in policy and lawmaking. The freedom of the people and representation gave way to corruption in the policymaking process. Individual representatives were now able to woo common folk with promises and be able to take bribes in order to alter these laws to how they or their buyers saw fit. In the Old Oligarchy, it mentions that whoever is not a man of the people and yet prefers to live in a democratic city rather than in an allegoric one has readied himself to do wrong and has realized that it is easier for an evil man to escape notice in a democratic city than in an oligarchy. Democracy opens the door directly to evil, which is easily bought and manipulated to a way that only benefits certain parties and individuals, even more so than an aristocratic-run society. Finally, when a democracy has become so corrupt and malleable in essence, it becomes a tyranny. Plato describes in the Plato Republic that, and so tyranny naturally arises out of democracy, and the aggravated form of tyranny and slavery out of the most extreme form of liberty. He reiterates that the actual fact is not what is being decided, but what is being falsified to the public. Democracy is a blind man's hope for freedom and liberty, but when it is being controlled by uneducated, unorganized, and unethical individuals, there is little difference between democracy and tyranny. And thus, unless there is no evil in the world, democracy is truly a flawed system of government. Thank you.
So, we're now, that was a good representation of what the Greeks thought about democracy. Not always positive with regards to it. So now we're going to start, we're going to move on to the next issue.
Hi, I'm Chantel Lake, and I will be arguing against forming a tyranny because oligarchy is clearly a better form of government for our new colony. I would first like to start out by saying that it would be unwise to let a single person hold power over our colony rather than allowing a group of well-qualified individuals to rule. In an oligarchy, multiple leaders will allow for a system of checks and balances to ensure the well-being and stability of our new colony. By setting up a tyranny, there of course must be a tyrant. And who in our colony is strong enough to rule alone? Will they truly act for the colony's sake or for their own selfish agenda? Hereon, the tyrant outlines the pitfalls of being a tyrant, trapped unhappily in his home kingdom. For it is risky for them to go where they will be no stronger than the crowd, and their property at home is too insecure to be left in charge of others while they are abroad. For they fear to lose their throne, and at the same time to be unable to take vengeance on the authors of the wrong. This highlights the instability of a tyranny, as well as the unrest that must breed throughout his own colony if he cannot entrust his throne to anyone, perhaps even his closest confidant while he is away. A tyrant is not a friend to anyone, and I do not believe that living in such a colony would be pleasant to the people itself. So then, would an oligarchy not be better suited for our colony? A single person would not have absolute power, and the people would have no need to fear or distrust its rulers. A tyrant has no ally, so it is safe to assume that any tyrant set up as the head of our state will only become an enemy to us all. Because after all, why would he allow anyone he thinks might overthrow him to enjoy freedom? And therefore he must look about him and see who is valiant, who is high-minded, who is wise, who is wealthy, happy man. He is the enemy of them all, and must seek occasion against them, whether he will or not, until he has made a purgation of the state. This quote from Plato's Republic supports that a tyrant will become an enemy to his people, because any individual seeking greatness will then find themselves purged. What man would not seek to increase his greatness and better himself for his own honor and the honor of his colony? A man trapped under a tyrant. A tyrant who only caters to his own needs will even turn against his own parents, to whom he is obligated to take care of in their old age. Desire for more power and money and false security will drive a tyrant to abuse his very own parents. As in himself there was a succession of pleasures, and the new got the better of the old and took away their rights, so he being younger will claim to have more than his father and his mother, and if he has spent his own share of the property, he will take a slice of theirs. And if his parents will not give way, then he will, first of all, try to cheat and deceive them. And if he fails, then he will use force and plunder them. This quote, also taken from Plato's Republic, emphasizes the fact that a tyrant is ruthless and will not hesitate to crush even his own parents for power, for desire, for the sake of himself rather than the sake of his people. Will you, the colonists, then rejoice over the establishment of an absolute ruler, a paranoid ruler, one who would fear his own people and as a result rid the colony of its best men because of insecurity? I think the answer is clear. Any tyrant will bring doom to this colony before it can take root and prosper. Thank you.
Alrighty. Everybody's doing really well on time right now, by the way. Everyone's nailing the 4-minute mark exactly. So Ms. Blankenship, you'll continue.
Okay, so before we can examine the advantages or disadvantages of a government, we must first consider our goal. Who are we? We're not slaves slaying our captors, nor are we pilgrims pursuing religious freedom. We are the aristocrats. Pretty next, right? We're the oikos. Our goal is to establish a prosperous city-state for our descendants and for ourselves. To do this, we must first choose a location with bountiful resources that are near trade routes. Our first speaker elaborated on this, on how specifically Iberia fulfilled these requirements. Next, we must make good political decisions, as this leads to stability, which our next speaker will talk about, and in particular economic prosperity, which our seventh speaker will later expound on. To ensure good political decisions are made, it is in our best interest to establish an oligarchical government. Aristocratic competition is the heart of an oligarchy and results in a better ruling body than a tyranny, first, because it encourages good behavior of citizens, and second, because it ensures the best people are elected to the job. This concept of competition and election fundamentally separates oligarchy from tyranny. Aristotle defines a citizen as he who has the power to take part in the deliberative or judicial administration of any state. And the crucial aspect of oligarchical government is that citizens may elect those from their own rank who they believe may best serve the city-state. A tyrant seizes power or inherits from those that did. While there are different forms of oligarchies, their aristocratic competition remains a unifying theme, and it is this competition that ensures a better ruling body than tyranny. Aristocratic competition encourages good behavior of citizens both in and out of office. In order to be elected, a citizen must be liked by the voting populace. One way of doing this is to make sure his fellow citizens are well provided for. In politics, Aristotle explains that nothing is more absolutely necessary than to provide that the highest class, not only when in office but when out of office, should have leisure and not disgrace themselves in any way. Wherefore, they should rule who are able to rule best. And even if the legislator does not care to protect the good from poverty, he should at any rate secure leisure for them when in office. So no matter a leader's personal opinions, it is in his best interest to make sure citizens retain or increase their wealth while he is in office, thus retaining or increasing the wealth of the city. This is not not true with tyranny. Tyranny is a kind of monarchy which has in view the interest of the monarch only. Oligarchy has in view the interest of the wealthy, us. The wealth of a tyrant does not directly correlate with the wealth of the citizens, and in fact it is usually more important for a tyrant that the citizens remain poor and unhappy. In Xenophon's work on tyranny, the tyrant Hieron says that despotism forces the tyrant to find fault even with his fatherdom, for he has no pleasure in seeing that the citizens are stout-hearted and well-armed. An oligarchy thrives in the prosperity of its people. A tyranny thrives on helplessness. Aristocratic competition also ensures the best people are elected to do the job. Common sense says that one person can't excel at every task. Aristotle, while examining the different governments of ancient Greece, makes the observation that it would seem also to be a bad principle that the same person should hold many offices, for one business is better done by one man. Basically, he's saying that you wouldn't appoint the same person to be a flute player and a shoemaker. It's just common sense. A tyrant makes all the decisions, but citizens in an oligarchy can compete and attempt to win the positions they excel at. This encourages intelligence and morality among citizens. In a tyranny, intelligence and morality are feared. Hieron bemoans that fact, stating that a tyrant may recognize a stout-hearted, a wise, or an upright man as easily as private citizens do, but instead of admiring such men, as should be, they would fear them. In a tyranny, wise men are a threat. In an oligarchy, wise men are leaders. Oh my God.
Nice. Well done. Okay. So now we'll move on to Martin.
Hi, I'm Mary Kate Martin. Today I will be discussing how an oligarchy government has more political stability for our new colony of Iberia than a tyrannical government. In an oligarchy government, the political power is bestowed on a small group of people. When this small group comes to power, they have the privilege of ruling over the citizens of that state. The group is given the opportunity by the citizens to prove that they are the correct form of government by taking into account what some of the people have to say and having a multitude of people who are involved in the decision-making process. In one of the most famous ancient Greek societies that were ruled by an oligarchy government was Sparta. The Spartans were able to obtain and keep this type of government for 500 years, according to Pluto and Plutarch. The Spartans were able to successfully keep this type of government because of the aristocratic group in power remained true to their oaths that they established with their people. In ancient Greece, in order to keep the citizens loyal to the cause, the leaders had to take into account their status with the people. This enabled a stable political following for the oligarchical government because since they were in good standing with their followers, then the political leaders were not fearful of the citizens revolting. If the citizens are content with how the laws are being enforced, then there are obedient following. If a tyrannical rule, this is not the case. According to Xenophon, tyrants were fearful of the people they ruled over due to the fear that another tyrant or government will try to overthrow them. Many have slain their own children. Many have been murdered by their children. Many brothers, partners in despotism, have perished by each other's hand. Many have destroyed even by their own wives, and by comrades whom they counted their closest friends. This is a quote from Xenophon on how the tyrannical society was filled with corruption. Corruption in a government does not lead to political stability, but a downward fall of the leader. My second point is, in the oligarchy society, a small group is involved in the decision-making process. This means that not just one person has a say in what the society does. This is a good thing because it gives the society dispersion of the role among the group. The oligarchy government must come together every time they have an important decision to make about the society and have a vote. This means that there is a check and balance system in place to make sure that the rule is in the good of the people. This is not in the case of a tyrannical society. The tyrant is the sole ruler and will say and do whatever pleases him. This is seen when Herdaeus and Astraean revolted against Hippias and Hipparchus. Hipparchus was killed in the revolt. As a result, in his death, his brother Hippias became even stricter tyrant. Instead of changing his rule for the better of the people, he killed many of his followers and feared that there would be another revolt. This ultimately led to his downfall after 3 years of his greater tyrannical reign. Many of the tyrannical governments ended in revolts, which does not lead to political stability. Sparta, being one of the most powerful and well-known ancient Greek societies, is proof that oligarchy rule is far better government than tyrannical. Oligarchy rule has political stability that tyrannical and democracy does not have. Oligarchy rule has rarely seen political uprising by the people that they rule because of the content of the way the ruler rules the society. The proof is in the 500-year rule of the Spartans. I believe that if the colony wants to obtain a political system that is not easily overthrown, it would be due to the oligarchy rule rather than tyrannical.
All right. Let's start on Mr. Smith.
We can all agree that economic stability of a colony is an extremely important aspect that keeps the colony thriving. Without leadership that promotes a stable economy, the colony will undoubtedly fall. We see an example of this truth in the Peloponnesian War. Around 450 BC, we see the Athenian Empire and the Spartans as the two prominent leaders in ancient Greece. The reason for this conflict was a growing fear of Athenian reign spreading throughout the Mediterranean. Under the Spartans' oligarchy, they are decisively able to come out of the conflict on top, due in large part of Sparta's economic stability promoted by the leaders of the oligarchy. Two main reasons for their victory were because of the allies they had and the large naval fleet they were able to develop. In the First Peloponnesian War, we see Athens able to keep the Spartans at bay due to their large naval fleet. During the Second Peloponnesian War, however, Darius of Persia supplied the Spartans with capital to build a capable naval fleet, and thus Sparta won. Due to the relations of Sparta's oligarchy with the Persian Empire, they were able to receive help when they needed it, and thus became one of the most prominent powers in the world. Due to the economic stability of Sparta under the oligarchy, they were able to offer incentives to the Persians for helping them win this battle, such as split the money received from defeating Athens. Another point we see in an oligarchy, especially the one we see before the war in Athens, is members of the aristocracy were generally required to pay for ships from their own funds. Instead of funding for the navy coming from the public, it would often be from the leaders of the oligarchy themselves. When it was their own personal money being spent on the ships, they were sure the funds would not go to waste. This kept Athens economically stable because the normal citizen would not have to put a lot of money in the production of ships, but was able to put his or her money in what they needed. This led to the success of Athens in being able to hold off the Spartans in the First Peloponnesian War, as mentioned earlier, and also success in being able to hold off this, and also success in the economy because the average citizen will not have to worry too much about putting their money into war. In ancient Athens, we also see a wise man named Solon who received autocratic powers by the Athenian citizens. Solon led several economic reforms that took place at a crucial time for Athens. These economic reforms included encouraging young men to start learning trades, cultivating olives, and encouraging foreign tradesmen to settle in Athens. These helped the economic stability of the oligarchy to thrive. This type of involvement by Solon was also something not allowed in tyrannies. What often sets apart oligarchies from tyrannies is the involvement of more than one person. In a tyranny, we typically see one person's opinion carried out, while in an oligarchy, we see several. This allows for more outside opinion to come in, and thus the opinion of Solon to come in and help change the economic well-being of Athens. My final argument about oligarchies is related to the life of Themistocles. In 483 BC, a massive new seam of silver was found in the Athenian mines at Larium. Themistocles proposed that the silver should be used to build a new fleet of 200 ships. while Aristides suggested it should be distributed amongst the Athenian citizens. Due to the oligarchy system in place, they were able to argue, and eventually Themistocles won out. Imagine if Aristides were the tyrant of the area, and what he said went. Well, the wealth of the silver mines would have been distributed to the people, which at first would have been great, but eventually would have led to the destruction of Athens. You see, because of the money from the mines was used to fund the ships, the Athenians were able to ward off the Persians when they invaded. Had they distributed the wealth, the Persians would have easily wiped out the Athenians. Although this choice by Themistocles was not the best economically for the short term, it ended up being the best economic choice for the long term, because Athens was not destroyed by the Persians. All of this was able to happen due to an oligarchical system that was set in place.
Okay, so we've heard Spain, oligarchy. So now we get to hear